Hello and welcome to another episode of Unsourced. Well, as always, my name is Elvis and I'm your host. Alright, so before we get to anything, I just have to say that I am deeply ashamed of myself for skipping over this last week when it happened. There was a lot of stuff going on and it was lost in the shuffle when it really shouldn't have been. But I really do want to go over and pay my respects to Carlos Esquerra, who did pass away from cancer, and it is really a tragedy because Esquerra will always be one of the greats of comic art, and especially due to his influence not only with 2000 AD and obviously Judge Dredd and Strong TM Dog and all of that really amazing and iconic work he did for them, but also the influence he's had on so many other artists, the genre in general, how creators go about really try to put in, or at least try to emulate in some way or reach the same heights of action, of humor, of that really indelible design with creativity, energy, and just a lot of work and effort always put into keeping things feeling fresh, exciting, engaging, and above all else, interesting. I think that outside of his more iconic works, one of my favorite works of his was Just a Pilgrim, which he did with Garth Ennis, and I think they also did a couple other things like Adventures in the Rifle Brigade, which was also really fun. But Just a Pilgrim, I think, really does have that great sense, like I said, humor, cynicism, while also having a lot of heart, but the heart, as with all Garth Ennis stuff, while the heart is a core aspect, it's shelled by layers and layers of rather oddball stuff, which only makes it pop a lot more. And it's honestly such a loss for the comic community and for all the lives that owe some parts to his works or him as a person. It really is just a tragic blow. I just hope that his family gets through this and finds some peace and closure. While I know that, along with the rest of his fans, we will miss him and we will honor his memory as best we can in the years to come, because he is really one of those luminaries, a true legend. So rest in peace, Carlos Esquerra. You've earned it. You've definitely earned that rest. Alright, so we're going to start off with some movie news, which right out of the gate came one of the most left field news announcements. I don't think anyone really saw this happening. I think people kind of thought that something along these lines might be a consequence of recent events, but no one really believed that it would be this on the nose. But James Gunn has been tapped to write and is being courted to direct Suicide Squad 2. Which we all know, the original Suicide Squad movie was a mess of editing, infighting, changed directions, and a lot of meddling. And while I don't think that the movie itself was ever going to be good, I think that David Ayers famously and quite humorously touted on Twitter before the movie came out that he had written the script in 6 weeks. And I don't think the movie would ever have been a very tight or very engaging and well-crafted movie. But along the line, we have Guardians of the Galaxy and we have executives thinking that the movie should be more like that. Trailers coming out. The very unforgettable Super Bowl trailer, which sort of sealed the fate of this movie, had come out, and it was really riding on a Guardians of the Galaxy type line, and had such an overwhelmingly positive response that WB gave reshoot control and editing control over to Trailer Park, who made that trailer and took Final Cut out of David Ayers' hands. So it was an entire mess, which I guess was kind of a success, but it is just a really dragged out movie for the type of energy and momentum that it wants to have. And I recently watched it because of this news. Like, is there anything here that's salvageable? And there is. And I hear reports about how Gunn, and this is all speculation because who knows if he's even written word one of the script, but there's rumors really that he's going to be soft rebooting. He's going to reboot the entire thing. So I really hope he doesn't, because it would be a shame and it would be really a downer if they had a movie that they completely mangled in their quest to be energetic and then they're like, oh well, we'll just shuffle down the rug. Because he already ruined one movie. Just use what works and try and merge it into what you're doing. But yeah, it's really weird that they made this whole chaotic trash fire in their quest to redo Guardians of the Galaxy. And now they got the guy who made Guardians of the Galaxy a success on their team to do the exact same thing. Which I can't help but feel reminds me a lot of what happened with Justice League. they still went around and got the director of what was a success and what they're trying to ape and really try to imitate back in to conform it more to that mold. And that did not turn out well for anybody. So I really hope that's not the case here with Suicide Squad. I think that there's a lot of good aspects that just did not mesh well because the movie is a complete clusterfuck, that hopefully they can streamline and just create a good narrative, which shouldn't be too hard. But knowing WB and knowing the executives and all this rigmarole, I think that the original director and writer left because it turns out that the Birds of Prey script was very similar to his Suicide Squad script. And if that's the level of control you're having, where you get two different projects that have the same script and you don't really know until later on when people are being casted, that's a problem. That really is a problem. So it doesn't bode well, but I have a little bit of faith in James Gunn. I don't think that Guardians of the Galaxy 1 was any good, but I really did love Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, so fingers crossed. But just one final comment on that is that apparently Bautista has pledged his support for Suicide Squad 2 and has announced on Twitter that he is hoping for a role in it. And I think that a lot of people are going out and saying Bane or King Shark or just these classic heavies. But my take on it is that let's just go a little bit weird. Let's go a little bit left field with this. And I don't know, maybe giving Count Vertigo or Catman, just be a little bit unexpected with it. And I think that would work a little bit better. But whether or not he appears in that, I think that he's fully pledged his camp with James Gunn. So it's been interesting to see if that affects Infinity War in any kind of way. Outside of that, there's only maybe a little bit of quick shots in movie news. Let's go through them quickly. Ryan Coogler, to no one's surprise, and I think everyone just sort of took it for granted that he would be, is announced to be back for Black Panther 2. So shocking no one. It was a decent movie, did really well, so it'd be foolish to not really try and sway him back into the fold. Brie Larson has signed up for 7 MCU appearances. Makes sense. I think they really want to, or at least they have to now that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is off the table, and definitely cosmic stuff, which they plan to seed with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, then that's the character to do it, and so that means that she'd probably have a lot of cameo appearances almost everywhere. Sony has put the Kraven the Hunter movie and the Morbius movie into active development, stating that they see themselves starting production on the Morbius movie as early as February of 2019, which I'm guessing is really in response to Venom doing well at the box office, making pretty much his entire budget back in global box office sales during the opening weekend. So, congrats for that. We'll be getting more on Mobius later when we get into the Blade Halloween discussion at the end of the show, but shelving that for now. And lastly, we have the second trailer for Glass, and it's a doozy. It's really one of those trailers that you shouldn't go out of your way to see if you want to go into this with fresh eyes, because it is quite hefty with the content, the characters, and pretty much set pieces, especially with some character arcs like Glass's mother, what her role is going to be, the direct kind of consequences of the three characters, Bruce Willis's character, James McAvoy's character, and Samuel Jackson's character, what they mean to each other, and the responses and the reactions that all three are engendering while being locked up together. Plus some odds and ends like the therapist, and or at least pretty much the grander sweep of the plan that Glass has cooked up. So yeah, it definitely shows a lot of just the greater scope stuff. I like the trailer. I'm excited for this movie. I don't deny that there is going to be some level of M. Night Shyamalan cheese to it. That's inevitable. And you really get a good amount of that in the trailer. M. Night Shyamalan, even his better movies, even his best movies, just can't help himself with some lines that just fall out and they just don't work. They land kind of limply. And, there's one or two in the trailer. It did put a damper on things, but like I said, it's all part and parcel. So I'm not going to really needle in on that point. Still looks like an exciting movie. I can't wait for it. And I can't believe it's almost 3 months away. Anyway, moving on to TV news, we actually have a few interesting pieces, such as CBS is working on developing a Secret Six TV show, which I'm guessing is part of whatever deal they had with WB for creating the Supergirl TV show, which ran its first season on CBS. And given how Supergirl turned out, I have little to no hopes about Secret Six. So I wish them all the best, but I'm not anticipating this at all. And the last bit of TV news I have to note, and I really do stress this, is that WB is working on its own streaming service to launch next year, which means that the DC Universe streaming service is dead in the water. There's no point to it anymore. I just don't see it lasting when all the stuff that it should have will obviously be going to the WB streaming service. I don't see why anyone would sign up for WB streaming service if they can't get the Batman movies or superhero movies in general, which, as I've said, only existed on DC Universe streaming service for a week or two before being pulled off. The site itself is really broken. There's lots of double links, dead links, because they keep switching things on and off, and the links still exist. They're just grayed out. There's no management, and everything from the forums to just comments are negligible. There's really no way to reply individually, to tag, to do anything of any kind of entertainment value on a social media aspect. So at this point, I just can't see this as anything else but putting it out of its misery. And finally, that leads us into comic news. First being that apparently DC is, for the foreseeable future, planning on toning down and regulating more of the content on their Black Label imprint, stating at Comic-Con that they'd wish that the Batman Dick had never happened, which I think should be a little bit kind of worrisome, because the entire imprint was pitched as a mature imprint, as the one for adults, the one for the older audiences. So the fact that they're now reeling in response to an outline, really just a little pencilized outline of a dick that only appeared in one panel, is like, what's the point then? You could have just added all these to Vertigo or something. There's no point in relabeling or putting the effort in trying to make this a thing if you're just gonna back down at the slightest provocation. It wasn't even provocation, people were just interested. I have to say, I wouldn't say like, I can't believe DC did this. No, it was more like, oh, wow, DC did this. And then people obviously trying to sell on eBay for hot bucks. And I've seen, I think it's gone for like $70 for the issue. So in a year or two, people are definitely going to be making bank on that. So yeah, I mean, I just really don't see the point of that imprint, at least for now. And the only other notable thing for comic news this week was that Eric Powell has announced that his Albatross Publishing imprint will be launching a new Goon ongoing series for its 20th anniversary. Now this is coming, at least I think maybe as a substitute for the long gestating Lords of Misery event that he had been planning for the character to appear in, with a prologue called Theater Bizarre that I think was published around 3 or 4 years ago. And I was really anticipating that series. So it's a shame to see it at least sidelined or integrated into something that, while I enjoyed the Goon a lot, I thought that it ended well. I thought that Lords of Misery was a good direction to take it, since like it's just another chapter, you're not infringing on it. Like, okay, the Goon is back. Like, it just feels lessened. The impact is lessened a bit. Because I really loved Once Upon a Hard Time. I loved the idea that there was a greater scope of things, and their story had ended. It just doesn't mean that we won't be seeing stories of them anymore, but it just had run its course, and now we could use them as characters while also expanding things. But no, now the Goon is back. I have no doubt that it's still going to be really entertaining, like the Goon always is, but it does feel like a little bit of a step backwards. I know that might be controversial to say, but it really does. Anyway, that's it for news this week. I will be reviewing Titans, and like I said, I'll be saving the Blade discussion for after what I read this week. So let's launch into that. Here's what I read this week. First and foremost, I have to give some due to Robert Venditti's and Brian Hitch's Hawkman. Not a lot due, but I do owe it some. Because this is a series that I read the first issue, I wasn't really that impressed. I thought that the premise was kind of fun, but it just didn't grab me, and I didn't feel the need to continue on. I really don't enjoy both creators by themselves. With Robert Venditti, there's never been a series by him in which I'm like, this is a great series, I really enjoyed this, I really engaged by it. At best it's like and at worst it's really horrible. But Hawkman, well, I'm still not impressed. It's kind of a surprise. It's easygoing, it's light-hearted, it handles the premise well. I really do think they have a good grasp of Carter's characterization. It's nothing too deathy, and I think that it's working to its benefit, because if it tried to be, I just don't think Venditti can handle it. But so far, in its whole tackling of the reincarnation issue, of Hawkman really trying to get some hold on his reality of his life and what it actually all means, it does enough of the job, well enough where he's going around meeting past lives. It gives it a really nice cohesive nature to it, which I think Hawkman is really essentially all about. He's trying to tether in all these different lives into one person and what that means for that person. I think that the Carter in it right now, currently present day Carter, excels at that. And little moments like Carter being completely over this kind of shit and Venditti really making those beats and those little punctuations stand out make this series an entertaining enough read. I don't regret reading it. I think that while it's nothing ecstatic, I enjoy it. I really do. So while the previous 4 issues were all about Hawkman's past lives, Hawkman number 5 takes a step back, introduces Ray Palmer as the Atom, and it does a lot of great little interplay moments. It's very slow. I think the entire series is slow, and that's my main complaint against it, because even in more action-packed or tense moments, it just feels a little bit dry. But I think that works better here because it's just 2 buddies catching up. It does feel like a really good buddy issue, so 2 thumbs up. Next up was Scooby Apocalypse, which I enjoy. I enjoy the main plot. I think it's really amping up, but the fact of the matter is that every time I say it's amping up, it gets renewed for like another 5 issues and then it just goes to hell. So I'm going to move past from that and go into the backup story. The new backup that starts this issue is centered on Adam Ant and his bid for recruitment into the Justice League. So the way that JMD and that Giffen portray this character is that he's a very pompous piece of shit, and his only competition for a Justice League membership spot is Itty, the plant alien that Hal Jordan used to pal around with. And it's such a great backup. I died laughing at the moments. Destroyed, and it split my sides every which way. So while I do enjoy the main plot, it does and has let me down so many times before. But this backup really starts off on a really great foot, and I have to say, I really enjoy it. 2 thumbs up for that. We also have Red Hood and the Outlaws number 27, which is disappointingly enough still only about Jason. It does have some stuff to do with Heroes in Crisis and obviously the fallout of that and Roy Harper and all that, and I think that stuff is really well done. But I still am just not a huge proponent of this new status quo. It's just not that engaging to me. And still no continuation of that backup spotlight for Bizarro and Artemis. It's still a really enjoyable series, but it's just not for me. Or at least it's starting to turn toward just something I'm not interested in reading for at least right now. Now, lastly for DC, we have the finale for Wildstorm Michael Cray, the 12th issue, and it could not have come any sooner. It is just an awful series. It is so bad. Boring, frustrating, inelegant, too tepid. It's everything that a Deathblow series shouldn't be. It's everything that the Wildstorm main series is wisely avoiding despite having all the pitfalls straight in front of it. It's perhaps an incredibly misguided and shamefully wasteful use of all that potential that it had. So while reading the last issue, it's such a non-ending too. It tries to be circular. It tries to bring everything back in a way that engenders some closure and some really hearty character moment. But because the rest of the series was insanely messy and unfocused, it just falls flat. And that's what this entire series has been, an entirely flat experience. Moving on to Kick-Ass number 8. And this issue, oh my god, this issue really does bring in some of that old Kick-Ass fire at the very end. The rest of the issue is, like I said about number 7, feels like a regular issue. It doesn't feel like it's parsing out the story the way the original series and Mark Millar and JR Jr. would. The final beats, they feel so kick-ass. It makes me insanely giddy. It hits that really, really thin line between something that's a little bit too over the top, a little bit too cynical, and just right and just humorous that I am definitely behind it. It opens up so much of that really bottled up and insanely entertaining chaos that Kick-Ass as a series is known for. If there's not this rolling effect of chaotic, messy, and unavoidable insanity that the arc is trying to build up, then you're not doing it right. And it finally gets to that point where I'm like, yes, I'm in this arc for the long haul. I want to see where this goes because there's too many roadblocks to be avoided, and it's going to be a hell of a ride. Oh, and I don't want to forget Immortal Hulk number 7. It came out and it's probably the weakest issue so far. It's just a general Hulk versus the Avengers story, and I thought that angle was well handled last month. While this month it just doesn't feel like it knows exactly what it wants to do other than just a punch out. So it's definitely losing some momentum for me, which is a shame because I've been behind and really enthused about this series since I decided to take the jump on it and see whether or not Marvel was actually putting out a Hulk comic that could stand the test of time. And I hope that now that the final page is out and there's this really interesting plot for Hulk that is hopefully executed really well, that it finds its footing again. But so far, it's just been sinking more and more down into just a bit of a boring kind of generic standard comic, which is a shame, which is a definite shame. Now, for the last thing I read this week, we have From Hell, the Master Edition, which is, as I mentioned a while back when it was first announced, the From Hell Colorized Edition, with some fixed art here and there where Eddie Campbell had wanted to fix. When the first coloring preview art came out, I was really negative about it. And looking into the first issue, the preview pages are inside it, but they have been rectified a little bit more. The first preview pages were insanely bad. Same pages here, they just work a little better. I think there's some more coloring and some more depth of field to the figures that were absent from the preview pages, so that's good to know. So while I think that this whole colorization idea was done and executed the best way it could have been, it's still not good. A lot of the time, you're going to see panels and sequences and characters that just come off smudged. Color is glommed on. It loses distinctness. It loses impact. There's one part, and one of my favorite parts in the first couple of installments, with the reveal of Queen Victoria. And in the black and white edition, it's so imposing. It's so etched in. It's like a force within itself, the figure of the queen and how she's depicted. Here, it's just a mess of gray. Like the color is just swept on. It loses that real sense of authority. So that's a shame. I still think that's okay here and there, but the colorization really is detracting from the experience for me. Alright, so moving on to, well, I guess the spoiler review of Titans. The first episode came out today on DC Universe, and I'll put a time code in the description. If you want to skip ahead, you can, and I'll give a little bit of a general thoughts at the end for when you skip ahead. Anyway, we're starting now. Titans is, I guess, decent enough. I know that there has been a lot of pushback against the series from what plot and story beats and character beats have been announced in PR releases by the actors, by the showrunners, and a lot of people, I think, pointlessly comparing it to comics and cartoons. And pointlessly comparing is a term that is pretty loaded, so I want to give a direct definition of it right now. Pointlessly comparing something to its source material is like comparing Constantine the movie to Hellblazer. It's not saying that it shouldn't be held up to a standard as an adaptation, but there's a point where that stops being the actual standard and you have to judge it as a thing on its own. And the difference between that is like the difference between the Jonah Hex movie and Constantine. It's not saying that you have to lessen the standards, but you have to judge it by an entirely new set of standards. Because there's a reason why Constantine is well regarded and it has its fans and its defenders and is generally seen as something that's a little bit underappreciated, while the Jonah Hex movie is seen as a giant piece of shit. Because as movies, that's the standards and that's the results. As a movie, as a general movie, Constantine is well acted, is well directed, it has a nice little plot, and it's, generally enjoyable. As a movie, the Jonah Hex movie is really, really shit, and it's badly written, badly directed, and the plot is a complete, insane, jumbled, uninteresting mess. That's the standard. So, judging Titans as a show separate from, I guess, whatever beholding nature you want to find between this and the old Teen Titans cartoon or the DCAU, which I still find ridiculous that people are comparing any of these three things together. As a show, it's decent enough. As a pilot, it does a lot of things that sometimes pilots don't get that quite right, and it falls in some traps that pilots always get wrong. So let's go beat by beat here. There's three separate plot threads in this pilot. You have Dick Grayson coming to terms with his new role in Detroit because it's a Jeff Johns produced show, so of course it's about Michigan, and him really trying to find his footing. You have Raven trying to find out and being thrust into a wholly different world due to her burgeoning powers and the powers that be trying to manipulate her or trying to get rid of her and all that kind of stuff. And a C plot with Starfire in some Eastern European country who apparently is on the lookout for some mysterious girl who turned out to be Raven, because that's predictable. Of those three plots, only the Starfire plot is pretty uninteresting. I don't think the actress is at fault there. It's just that the plot just feels kind of overstuffed. It feels like a plot that could have been picked up in the second episode as maybe a prologue. In the first episode, it just takes away from a lot of the momentum because the Dick Grayson and Raven subplots are actually pretty intertwined and they do balance off each other a little well, and I actually enjoy both those plots, and I think that the actors and actresses in the writing really service those plots, while the Starfire one just feels like filler every time it pops up. But speaking of the acting, I really enjoyed Raven's actress, because the first couple of scenes before it really amps up with her home life and with her at school and just the sort of atmosphere trying to build up about her being a little bit of an outcast, I think that she plays that really well. There's a lot of believability in the depiction of this very sullen and inward feeling teenager. It doesn't go anywhere cliche, or at least too cliche. And it plays itself off relatively subdued, and it works because you get a feel for the character as a character, despite not really digging in too deep as of now, without having to suspend a lot of its relief there, because it's such a naturally played role. There's a lot of vulnerability, and there's a lot of really carefully acted moments, especially one near the middle where there's this threat of human trafficking, and that scene was really kind of tense, and she handled it so well. The danger and the suspense and the fear that the character is really trying to navigate and trying to keep her wits about her. These whole scenes were really, really entertaining, and I can't find any fault with them. So 2 thumbs up to that actress. So as a whole, as a pilot, getting Robin and Raven together and, really trying to start getting this entire coalescing motion rolling. Because, next episode is going to be Hawk and Dove, and then one after that probably Beast Boy and all that. It does a good job getting the momentum kickstarted a little bit. That being said, there are some parts of this pilot that I thought were a little bit dumb and a little bit out of place. And it's not like something where Starfire, which, like I said, the only problem I have with her character and her plot is that it's boring. It's a cliche amnesia plot. So it's not something that really needs to happen. It just feels very hackneyed. But the things that really do stick out to me is parts of the Raven plot where her adoptive mother was trying to raise her to be good because she knew about her past. And you have this, I guess, demon hunter who's trying to kill her. And so he kills the mom, despite the fact that they're kind of adjacent to each other's causes. It just feels like he only exacerbated the problem of trying to keep Raven from becoming evil. It just feels very first draft, and that the motivation isn't quite as clear, and it's a little bit muddied. And there's a part near the end where Starfire uses her powers to just disintegrate in a huge cleansing ball of fire 3 people who are trying to threaten her. And the picture that she needs, which is a profile of Raven, is completely untouched in the now cinder to ash room that she's in. The 3 people that she destroys, they're like statues of ash that blow away, crumble to dust. But the picture she needs that's on the table, it's also charred, is only frayed around the edges. So I thought that was lackluster. Speaking of silly, I know people will be wondering about the fuck Batman scene. And honestly, I think that in context, it works a lot better. Because you have Robin entering this action scene. And the moment he appears, all the henchmen and all the little yellow doers, they start looking around for Batman saying, "Where's Batman? He has to be around here somewhere." Which ticks Robin off. He beats all their asses. And then he's like, "Fuck Batman," because he's annoyed. Wouldn't you be? I thought that was a little funny. It's not, a laugh riot, but it could get a little chuckle. I think that people were really blowing it out of proportion. Other stuff, like things that they've changed directly for this series and for this whole different take they're doing on it, like Batman being killer and all that stuff, that's all tertiary. It's a show. It's a different show. It's doing its own thing. So whatever. As long as whenever they bring it up or whenever they try to bring it into the fold that it works on its own internal consistency, that's all that matters. So overall, it's okay. It's not without its problems. It's not without its little plot hinges that are a bit weaker than others. But I thought that the actors, I thought that the story at least, and its sense of momentum and just direction as well, were all well done. So yeah, I'm going to be watching the next episode, and hopefully it keeps that momentum up. I thought it was pretty good. Like I said before, entertainment means so much more than fidelity. And if you skipped ahead, you're going to be hearing my final thoughts, my general final thoughts right now, which is that the pilot has some issues, but the acting, directing, and the writing, plus momentum, all hit more than it has issues. So if you want to check it out, if you're interested, then check it out. Keep an open mind. It's entertaining, and I think that that's always better than being accurate, or at least what comic fans want to believe is accurate. With that over, I know that I've missed 2 episodes of The Gifted. I'm going to try and catch up with that next week because it's like with season 1, I enjoy it, but it's just not something I'm rushing out, and I always miss out on the time to actually talk about it. Wait until next week. Maybe I'll get back with Gifted on that one. Anyway, let's move on to Blade, which won this week's Halloween poll to be discussed on this show. And it is, as I have always remembered, kind of a classic. It really does hold up more often than not. I think that what really gives it that edge and what really gives it that sense of longevity and engagement and fun is the way it handles like 3 of the core aspects of that movie. The vampires, the real world, the modern urban world, and Blade himself. Because despite the fact that Blade is technically part of the vampire side of the movie, he is definitely on a different wavelength than even the real world to the vampire world, because seriously, the juxtaposition of all 3 of those is what makes some of the best parts of that. And nowhere do you see that better than the opening scene, which is quite iconic if you think about it. The whole ravers going on a date, getting to this warehouse district, the dance of blood, everyone just riding around with such evocative and really intense, and if you're in the right mindset, really fun imagery of just this really popping music, and they're all just jamming around, vibing together. Blade coming in probably was one of the prototypical leather armor tactical costumes of the comic book movie genre. So I think I'm gonna place all the blame on him for making that the go-to for ages. And just starts wasting everybody. And it's just so weird because as the movie does progress, these three scenes are all rooted from that one scene. You have the urban real world, which is shot in such a frank and incredibly face front sort of way. There's streets, the lighting is realistic more often than not, the settings are sparse and kind of constricting, and then you go to the ultra sterile illuminated white neon aesthetic of the vampire world, despite the fact that they still wear nominally normal clothes. And then you go to Blade, who makes chrome silver weaponry, talks in a near constant brooding monotone. So seriously, the back and forth between all these makes it pop. It never gets boring. It always stays fresh feeling. You don't really get settled in one place. And the fact of the matter is that all three of these vie for attention, but the crossover between them just gives it a lot of energy. It piggybacks off all of these ones. You can go from a scene where you have characters in the hospital tending to patients to someone in a sci-fi-esque room going about prophecies and looking at ancient scrolls written in dead languages to Blade sharpening like a multi-tool throwing star. It's honestly never boring. Visually, aesthetically, so it's working on so many levels here. The story as it is incredibly simple, which, like I've said on multiple occasions, simplicity is only ever as good as the execution, and it's executed relatively well. Normal person coming into this greater unknown mystical world. You have the stoic, heroic character being their guide through this world, and just general prophecy, chosen one, mythology, and lore being crammed in there. So a lot of it is hinged more upon like the characters, because like I said, when you go that simple, it's the characters that need to pop. So you have characters like Karen Jensen, played by Ed Boucher Wright, who I think is probably the real star of this movie, because like I said, she fulfills that straight archetype of incomer normal person to this far out and really outrageous world, and she does that really well. Her reactions are incredibly engaging. The character and the way she's written is really easy to relate to and follow by and really be sucked into. So I really enjoyed her character. Before I did this rewatch, I hardly remembered her. I just thought of her like maybe a stock character, but no, she does a lot, and she actually does have this depth of character and motivation to her that makes me really sad that she never appeared again. I think she only gets like one mention in Blade Trinity and maybe no mention at all in Blade 2, when that's a character I would have definitely wanted to keep around, because I think that the acting was great for her. I think that there was so much more they could have done with her in sequels to capitalize on just the sense that her story in this world wasn't done yet. Because she just disappears, and that sucks. That really does. Wesley Snipes as Blade, though, is a bit uneven. He's just kind of boring. Not entirely boring. I think that the stock stoic character, when you have humane moments thrown into there, and you play one right with the stock stoic straight character, it can mean so much more. And he definitely gets one or two moments like that. But the rest of the time, it's played so unevenly. Blade really is meant to just be a badass monolith. That's it. He's meant to just be a prop for badassery and fight scenes and all that. And the reason why it's so uneven is because they write Blade and Wesley Snipes acts Blade just scene by scene. Like, what is needed to get the most reactions from this particular scene. So he can go from, like I said, a monotone, brooding, kind of gritty character that talks like this. And then you have one scene where he gets shot at by the police, and all the bullets deflect off his leather armor. And he goes, "Motherfucker, are you out of your damn mind?" And like, what kind of different movie did that come from? And the dissonance just is too much to bear. It's a funny line. It's a great moment, but it just doesn't work with how Blade is the rest of the movie. Pick one or the other, because it makes Blade less interesting. But overall, I think that Stephen Dorff, Chris Christopherson, they all fill their functions. I just really want to get into one thing, and it's something that the great Illuminated, who I will again can link all their stuff. They're hard at work at Mad Magic and the ever popular Marvel parodies that they're doing. So please check them out. Follow them on Twitter. They're posting updates on their new product now, which I definitely recommend you get on board before it comes out because it's looking great. But something that they mentioned was about the ending, which I really want to parse into a little bit before I get to their prompt. The ending, like I said, focuses on some chosen one fulfilling the prophecy, giant monster type stuff, and it's called La Magra, which is gibberish in Spanish in the context that they're using it. But what gets at me is that the prophecy is probably one of the most complicated prophecies of all time because there's so many moving parts to it. And the finale, you don't really ever get a sense of what they actually need to make this prophecy work. They need Blade because he's a daywalker, and La Magra had that same kind of ability, I think. And they need like the 12 houses of the vampires, their leaders, to be lightning bolted into demon spirits to possess the person who would become the new La Magra, right? But then here's the rub. You have Blade in a coffin draining his blood, and you have a different coffin of a similar design get struck by lightning to kickstart everything, and you have one of the heads of the vampire clans get killed before it even happens, and everything still goes off without a hitch. And I'm just wondering, what exactly did they need? Because it's touted up as this really intense vampire god power. And so when I was a kid, I always thought like, wait a minute. I guess because of all that happened, the guy dying, Blade escaping from the tomb that was like the similar tomb that got struck by lightning, it didn't quite work. So this guy isn't a vampire god. He just has regenerating powers. But rewatching it, it didn't go wrong because they act like it went off perfectly. So I guess it's just disappointing that La Magra is just, well, some guy with really rapid regenerating powers because they build it up and they tout it up so much throughout the movie. So, it just makes me wonder, like, what was the prophecy even about? Why did they need any of this if it's just like a very tiny, small little thing? La Magra isn't even that impressive. And what Illuminated prompted on Twitter for me to talk about was the alternate ending, the original ending for the movie, which had La Magra be like a giant actual blood tornado, which is what they call him, the blood tide, the blood wave. And you can find bits and pieces of this alternate ending online. And I want to go through it bit by bit because there's a lot of stuff in this alternate ending that deserves a little bit of dissection. But the first part is, of course, La Magra being, well, an actual like giant globby blood monster that's meant to cleanse the world of humans and turn everybody into vampires. They gave up on that because they decided the effect was too cheesy, that it didn't work, and then it looked goofy. And clips you can find really do play into that because it's just, well, giant CGI blood circle with Stephen Dorff's like body and torso superimposed on it. And, well, I guess if you're going to do it like that, it would turn out bad. It would turn out looking like shit. But I don't think it needed to be like crap. I think that it really could have worked. I just don't think they actually had the effort or the care to put into it because let's say you keep the blood tornado aesthetic, but then you make it an aura for Stephen Dorff's character. Have him be at the eye of the storm, like a real tornado. And you could have the final fight, but Blade and him are trapped in the center of this giant, like, cone of destruction and blood. That would have been really cool. You can still have like this really personal one-on-one fight because one of the things that the director and the writer, they talk about being disappointed by is that the audience checks out because Blade at that point is just fighting random goo blobs of blood. But then you could still have that intimacy. You could have made it a lot more interesting, like a sumo wrestling fight with swords and martial arts. I would have paid to see that 10 times. Anyway, that's one aspect. Another aspect is that at the very end of the alternate ending, you get a tease that the vampire threat is only going to be increasing. It was meant to end like a little sequel hook / cliffhanger where Blade and Karen are getting out into like the desert wasteland where they were. And she mentions like the fight isn't over. There's a vampire over there on the ridge. And you see a vampire all black, trench coat, duster, whatever, long black hair, pale white skin, and so that's where it ends, saying like this is gonna be the next fight. And apparently that was meant to be Morbius. But they, for whatever reason, they decided not to go in that direction. They wanted to keep the movie more self-contained, and the movie then ends on a really great stinger. And it's a stinger you see in monster movies all the time, where they fight the new monster and it ends right before they cut that motherfucker's head off. And it's a great little moment. But Morbius, I think, would have been really interesting because they did go in a similar direction for Blade 2, which, knowing that they want to do Morbius for a sequel originally, makes a lot more sense because Blade 2 is all about the scientific vampires. Like, they have genetically engineered a vampire, and so now it's the new big top-of-the-line threat, which is similar to Morbius, who is not a traditional vampire. He's called the living vampire. He's also a scientifically created one. So I don't know really the production on Blade 2. I don't know if Guillermo del Toro did like a page one rewrite or whatever, but there's definitely some parallels there that I think could have been influenced by their intention with Morbius originally. And so I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that would have worked, but I do like the ending as it is. I just think that the La Margaret part could have been way better, and that, well, they did do a good job with the final moments of the theatrical ending. Although my main problem is that they use most of that ending. They use most of the Karen's ending in the theatrical cut. But now, because they just slice off that part where she mentions and she motions toward Morbius, Karen just kind of gets cut off, and that's the last bit we see of her. That's a shame. I feel like they could have made this work a little bit better. But overall, the movie is really fun. Like I said, it's never boring. It is inconsistent at times, but at least it's entertainingly inconsistent. And it juggles so many tones and aesthetics and atmospheres that you are always on your toes a bit. Like 2 thumbs up, it holds up. It's still a classic of a comic movie. I really enjoyed rewatching it, revisiting it, and trying to see, all the different things that I missed before, which it turns out was quite a bit. So thank you all for voting for that one. I had a really great time. And this segues perfectly into listener questions, with our main one by AkiCat on Twitter being about Blade. And their question is, if I wanted to do a reboot of Blade, would I want a R-rated movie or a 13-episode or so series? And who would I cast as Blade if they did do a reboot? Alright, so a reboot of Blade. I would go for movie because, I don't know, I just think that the horror movie, kind of this gothic nature of like vampires and vampire hunting, it just lends itself to a movie a lot more than, say, having to stretch that out and possibly even stretch your resources out more across a TV series. Because, not to denigrate any kind of, vampire TV show, I know there's been a lot of really good ones, but I just think that like it's a great little punch up that definitely deserves like the energy and the focus that a movie can provide. So yeah, I would do an R-rated movie just for the heck of it. I don't think it really needs to be R as much, because vampires, they can bust in the dust and there's always just lots of fake blood, and fake blood has really lessened up nowadays in terms of the rating system. So whatever kind of movie, just as long as it knows how to be practical with itself and it has a great energy. Who would I cast as Blade in the reboot? That's a hard question. They did a straight clean reboot, and this isn't an original choice. I think that this has been bandied out quite a bit, but the guy who played Manape in the Black Panther movie, Winston Duke, because in preparation for this, I reread some of Blade's first appearances, and while he's still like that kind of generic, kind of stoic, kind of meant to be eternally, consistently badass kind of character, there's a little bit more of a flair to him, and I think that Winston Duke can carry that really well while also being as imposing as Wesley was. Yeah, I think that would work really well. Anyway, thank you for those questions, AkiCat. I hope I answered them to your satisfaction. And thank you again, Illuminated, for your prompts and for your comments that helped me with the discussion on Blade. Both of you, I really, really appreciate it, and I am so grateful. And thank you for everyone who voted. I got so many votes for this week's poll. It's amazing, and I can't wait for next week's, because I really, really enjoy just getting it out there and seeing what people really respond to. So thank you all, and again, thank you for everyone who ever sends in questions or ever sends in comments, feedback, or general support. It's amazing, and there wouldn't be any show without you, and I don't take it for granted at all. It's extremely humbling. And if you are listening and you want to send in your own question, comment, or thoughts, again, you can find me on Twitter at THE_SNICKMAN. And I just want to give a shout out to the cover artist at DOTEMCEE. It's still a great cover art, and I am eternally grateful. Anyway, next week we are again 1 week closer to Halloween, and see you all then. Hope you have a great one.